All right, people, someone has to ask the tough questions. Did Friends actually steal its whole vibe from Living Single? And did the network quietly reward the copy while tearing apart the original black cast from the inside? That's the allegation people keep repeating. Not my words. This is what former cast members and exec stories are hinting at. The rumor is that in the 90s, Living Single had the chemistry, the characters, the Brooklyn energy, and even the six friends figuring out life together format first. And then suddenly a year later, Friends shows up with the same formula, a bigger budget, full promo, and becomes the voice of a generation. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of Living Single, people say it was getting way uglier than anybody watching at home knew. Allegedly, you had cast members being threatened with fat jokes if they didn't lose weight, a fan-favorite actor fired for speaking up too much, and quiet pressure to tone down certain characters because they were too strong. I don't know if every part of that is true. I wasn't in those rooms, but that's the story insiders have been telling for years. And it starts sounding less like coincidence and more like a pattern. Because here's the part almost nobody talked about on TV back then. One of those shows got treated like precious brand IP. The other one, which happened to be black-led, got treated like it should just be grateful to exist. At least, that's how the cast describes it. And when you follow the money, the marketing, and who got protected versus who got pushed out, it gets messy fast. So let's pull this apart. We're going to walk through the claims, the interviews, the pay drama, the weight-shaming threats, the firing that shocked fans, and how Queen Latifah went from sitcom star to the one person in the room executives couldn't control. These are allegations, these are public statements, this is what people have said happened when the cameras weren't rolling. I'll tell you what lines up, what sounds exaggerated, and where the receipts actually are. Let's get into the rumors. On TV, everything looked fine. That's the lie. Living Single felt effortless. Six friends in Brooklyn, trading jokes in a brownstone, flirting, hustling, clowning each other, surviving adulthood together. It felt warm. It felt familiar. It felt safe. And when a show feels that natural, people assume the situation behind it must have been just as smooth. Viewers thought, oh yeah, this cast must all be best friends, the network must love them, everybody's getting taken care of. That was the illusion. Then Friends shows up. 1 year after Living Single hits, NBC suddenly rolls out this shiny new sitcom about six 20-somethings in New York, in apartments they technically could never afford, sitting around joking about love and rent and commitment. And here's where the misconception really locks in. Most people grew up believing Friends was the template. Like Friends invented the formula, and every other group of friends in the city sitcom was just riding that wave. That's how it was sold, that's how it was marketed, that's how it was remembered. But if you rewind the tape, that's backwards. There's a story that's floated around for years about Warren Littlefield, the NBC president at the time. Being asked which show he wished he'd grabbed that season, the answer people repeat is Living Single. And then, not long after that, Friends appears and gets treated like the moment. So viewers were trained to think, wow, NBC really found something special, when the blueprint was already alive on Fox with a black cast. That one detail alone messes with the whole timeline people carry in their head, because it suggests Friends didn't change TV. It got packaged as the safe, ad-friendly version of something that already existed. Allegedly. And this is where the split in public perception really starts. The average casual viewer in the 90s didn't sit around reading trade magazines or Variety. They weren't tracking who got what budget. They weren't comparing ad buys. They just saw one show everywhere. Billboards, press tours, primetime commercials, full-page promo spreads. Which show was that? It wasn't Living Single. It was Friends. Now here's why that matters. When the machine is behind you, you get called relatable, universal, iconic. When the machine is not behind you, you get labeled niche, urban, cult classic for a specific audience. And once marketing slaps that label on you, money follows that label, awards follow that label, future jobs follow that label. That's how a story gets rewritten in real time. People start to believe one cast is bigger, more talented, more mainstream, and the other cast is good for what it is. That is not an accident. That's positioning. So the misconception, the really sneaky one, is that Living Single and Friends just had different destinies. Like, oh well, one happened to blow up and one just kind of stayed cute. When you listen to the actors from Living Single talk about how Fox promoted them versus how NBC pushed Friends, it doesn't sound like one show naturally outperformed the other. It sounds like one show got star treatment and the other show was told to be grateful, allegedly. And once you know that, the next part hits a lot harder. Because if the outside story is that everything's fine, but the inside story is that you're doing the same kind of work, getting less backing, and then watching another show eat off your plate, resentment starts to build. Power struggles start to build. People start speaking up. And that is exactly where the drama behind the scenes of Living Single begins. Here's the hot take. The downfall of Living Single wasn't creative differences or, oh, shows just end. The downfall was pressure. Not ratings pressure. Control pressure. Allegedly, the network didn't just want a successful show, they wanted a quiet show, a cooperative show, a show where nobody rocked the boat, nobody asked why the other sitcom across town was getting million-dollar salaries and massive promo, and nobody said the word unfair out loud. And according to people who were there, Living Single stopped being that kind of show. Let's start with T.C. Carson, who played Kyle Barker. Fans remember Kyle as the smooth one, funny, stylish, always sparring with Maxine. He wasn't background, he was an energy source. He was part of the identity of the show. So when he suddenly disappeared, viewers were like, oh, so his character left? And he had to come out years later and basically go, no, I didn't leave, I got fired. Now, why that matters, Carson says he had become the one who spoke up to the network, the go-between, the person who would walk in and say, hey, the cast has concerns, which sounds reasonable, right? You'd think a show that's working would want open communication. But from the way he tells it, once he became the voice for everybody, the studio saw him as a problem. Not because he was causing trouble, but because they couldn't control him. He literally said they cut the ear off, meaning, if we remove the spokesperson, everyone else falls in line. That tells you how they allegedly viewed the cast. Not as partners, as something to manage. And here's where it starts feeling nasty instead of just business. Because this isn't just, we're changing story direction. This is, you're useful until you're inconvenient. Then you're replaceable. You can smile on camera all you want, but that sends a message to everyone left on set. If you speak too loudly, you're next. Now layer Kim Coles into this. Kim Coles played Sinclair. Heart, softness, warm comic timing. Literally, nobody hated Sinclair. Sinclair was that character where, if you're binge watching old episodes, you relax a little when she's in the scene. She was comfort. And allegedly, this is the person executives were pressuring about her body. The way it's been described is ugly. She says she was told to lose weight, and if she didn't, they'd start writing fat jokes into the show. Imagine being told your punishment for not shrinking yourself for someone else's aesthetic is public humiliation every single week in front of millions of people. That's not notes. That's a threat. That is specifically designed to remind you that they control how the world sees you. You don't just try to cut a character like Maxine by accident. You don't oops and almost erase a black female lead who's brilliant, independent, educated, and not scared of confrontation. You only do that if something about her existence makes certain people uncomfortable. Now, the polite corporate phrasing for that is creative direction, or we don't know where the character fits long term. But when you line that up with everything else, the way they allegedly punished T.C. Carson for being outspoken, the way they allegedly threatened Kim Coles about her weight, it stops sounding like random creative tweaks and starts sounding like a pattern. That pattern looks like this. Anybody who pushed, anybody who brought power, anybody who didn't sit in the be nice, be grateful box was suddenly a problem. And here's where it gets really interesting, because something else was changing at the same time. Power inside the cast. Queen Latifah wasn't just playing Khadijah. By the later seasons, she was leveling up behind the camera, co-producer, flavor unit, real say, real leverage. She wasn't just talent anymore, she was infrastructure. And once somebody in the cast becomes infrastructure, the energy shifts immediately. People start moving different. Studios start talking to them different. Decisions start flowing through them in a way they weren't in season 1. That kind of power jump is rare for a young black woman in the 90s. It's also how you become the person they can't ignore. Now, depending on who you ask, this is where the quiet tension allegedly starts to creep in. Because when one cast member is rising into producer status and other cast members feel like they're being controlled, pushed out, or disrespected, that can turn into a fracture, even if nobody says the word beef out loud. You can feel that in the way people talk about Kim Coles and Queen Latifah over the years. Nobody's dragging each other in public. Nobody's out here doing a tell-all meltdown. But there are these careful little phrases phrases. Kim Cole saying she had to take care of herself. Mentions that not everybody got along. Hints that certain choices about who got spotlight, who got protected, and who just quietly vanished from multiple episodes weren't accidental. And when you put all those little hints next to each other, it kind of sounds like this. One woman was still fighting to not be mocked for her body. One man says he got fired for standing up for the entire cast. One breakout female character almost got written out because she was too much. Meanwhile, one woman in the cast was becoming a producer, building a company, getting movie roles, and leveling up into a different pay grade and a different kind of respect. Let me be super clear about something, because this matters. That does not automatically mean Queen Latifah is the villain of the story. That's way too lazy. It's not she got power and turned on everybody. Real life is messier than that. What it means is that Hollywood always creates a food chain. And if a network can't control the whole group, the next best move is identify the person with the most upward momentum and build around them. This part gets swept under the rug a lot because nobody wants to admit how obvious it was. On paper, Living Single and Friends were doing a similar format. Young adults figuring themselves out in New York, dating each other, clowning each other, being broke but somehow never really broke. But look at how they were rolled out. Friends got the huge network push, wall-to-wall coverage, magazine spreads, full branding. The whole, they're the voice of a generation language. Living Single did not get that same all-out backing, despite already having the format locked and characters that connected with Black audiences immediately. Here's why that detail is not petty. Promo affects pay. When a network decides, this is our crown jewel, that cast gets money, leverage, and insulation. When the same company or the same tier of execs basically shrugs at another show, that cast gets told, we'll see what we can do. It turns a workplace into a class system. Imagine watching something that looks suspiciously like your show get sold to America as genius, while you get told, you're lucky you're even on air. You cannot convince me that doesn't mess with morale. This is where the TC Carson firing hits different. If you believe what he says, that he was basically acting as the union rep of the cast, saying what everyone else was scared to say, then removing him doesn't just change creative direction. It cuts the head off any organized push for fairness. That's bigger than one actor's job. That's a strategic move, and you feel the ripple. After he's gone, there's this hollow spot where Kyle used to sit in the story. The chemistry with Maxine? Gone. That adult, flirty, sarcastic tension the show built for seasons? Gone. You can feel the air change, like somebody opened a door mid-winter. And viewers felt that shift even if they couldn't explain why. Now let's go back to Kim Cole's, because her situation is another you cannot spin this pretty moment. Allegedly being told to slim down or else the show would start making her body a target on camera is not creative guidance. That's public shaming as leverage. That's humiliation as HR policy. And as much as we talk today about body positivity, this was the 90s. There was basically no protection for you if you weren't sample size TV thin. So when she quietly disappears from multiple episodes, viewers made up their own reasons. Oh, maybe Sinclair's in Minnesota visiting family, etc. Meanwhile, off camera, it sounds like she was simply tired of being treated like a punchline waiting to happen. And now let's layer in one more thing the audience never saw. Internal temperature between cast and executives. By the later seasons, you could feel this "you people are replaceable" energy from the network, allegedly. You see that in the way storylines started getting softened and edited to make the show, quote, broader. Translation, less specifically Black, less specifically sharp, more anyone can watch this. That's code for please don't make suburban ad buyers uncomfortable. The show that started out grounded in culture and confidence suddenly had notes coming down from people who, according to the cast, didn't even understand the culture in the first place. That's the part that had the actors heated, strangers in suits saying, here's how you should talk. So now, step back and look at the scoreboard. One of your leads is gone. Not because his character was done, but because his mouth was too honest. Another core face of the show is now ducking episodes after being body targeted. Another star is quietly leaving under personal reasons that sound a lot like, I'm not doing this to myself anymore. Executives allegedly tried to erase Maxine, which would have straight up taken out one of the strongest Black female characters on TV at the time. And right when all of that is happening, the cast is watching Friends become the culture, even though Living Single literally was the culture. So what do you think that does to a show's future? This is why I don't fully buy the neat corporate story of, oh, the show just ran its course. That's not how this reads. This reads like people were exhausted from having to fight for basic respect at work. And that brings us to the person in the middle of all of it. The one name you cannot escape in this conversation. Because while everybody else was trying to survive, she started building her own machine. And that's where this stops being just drama and turns into power. Now we talk about Queen Latifah directly, because her career after Living Single is where this all snaps into focus. And I want you to notice something. Every time the industry tried to move her out of frame, she found a different frame. First, the talk shows. Most people forget this, but Queen Latifah has had not one, but 2 daytime talk shows with her name on them. The first one ran in the early 2000s. The second one came back in the 2010s with full studio backing, big guests, the "we're doing this right this time" energy. And then it got canceled after 2 seasons. Public line, ratings, cost, syndication math, all that. The usual Hollywood breakup speech. But here's what stuck. After the cancellation, reports came out saying she personally paid her laid-off staff through the holidays, out of pocket. That is not normal host behavior. Most hosts just release a statement and go back to their house in the hills. She paid her people. Whether you think that's good PR, genuine loyalty, or both, it tells you how she understands power. It's not just "I'm the star," it's "I'm responsible for other people eating." That's a mindset shift. That's not cast member thinking. That's boss thinking. Now line that up with what was happening back in the Living Single days. While other cast members were allegedly feeling replaceable, literally being told, "shut up or you're gone," she was already sliding into producer status, already creating her own production lane, flavor unit, already figuring out how to not need the network's protection because she was building her own. That creates distance. Not necessarily drama, but distance. When you're playing chess at that level, you stop begging for approval and you start negotiating from leverage. That's how she stayed in rooms other people got pushed out of. Now let's get into the part the public loves to bring up whenever they talk about Latifah, the "she's not perfect" file. Because for anyone who wants to say, oh, she only rose because the industry loved her, slow down. The industry actually did try to make her stumble. She's had legal hits. In the 90s, she was arrested on weapons and substance charges. In the early 2000s, she got hit with a DUI situation. Headlines loved that. That's exactly the kind of thing execs used to say, see, liability, hard to insure. Maybe we should go in a different direction. And she still bounced. She didn't disappear. She didn't get quietly blackballed. She pivoted, took higher profile roles, and went more serious in film. Then you've got the personal losses. Her brother died in a motorcycle accident in the early 90s. Her mother passed in 2018. That is heavy. That is identity-shifting grief. So while she's dealing with disrespect toward her show, getting compared to a copy of her show, losing castmates to burnout and corporate pressure, she's also dealing with actual life heartbreak. And she kept working. She didn't just stay employed, she advanced. All of that feeds the narrative that she wasn't just another sitcom star. She was someone the industry could not easily get rid of. And that matters because once a person becomes "you can't get rid of her," they also become "you have to go through her." Think about what that means on a set. If you're another cast member and you're tired and the network is treating you like you're lucky to be there, and you're watching someone next to you turn into the one person the network actually listens to, how do you not start to feel like the show isn't ours anymore? It's hers. Again, that doesn't automatically mean she betrayed anyone. That's too simple. It means the balance of power shifted. It means the show stopped being a flat ensemble and started becoming an orbit. And the second any show becomes an orbit, some planets get closer to the sun and some get pushed out. You can see that in how exits went down. T.C. Carson, gone, and he says it was because he wouldn't shut up. Kim Coles, suddenly off episodes after alleged weight pressure and threats about fat jokes. Kim Fields leaves quietly and respectfully, but if you read between the lines, she sounds emotionally done. Erica Alexander, Maxine, almost cut early on because execs thought her character was too much. This isn't random. This looks like a cleanup job. Smooth the edges, remove the squeaky wheels, tone down the loud ones, keep what's marketable. package it. And this all lines up with how the network allegedly tried to broaden the show later, like sanding off the specifically black edges to reach this vague, safer general audience. Translation: we want your rhythm, but not your boundaries. We want your flavor, but not your voice. And once you start doing that to a show, it's kind of already over. You're just dragging out the goodbye. So by the time Queen Latifah is leading movies, building a company, and writing checks for other people, you're seeing exactly why she survived and the show didn't. She figured out the trick. The trick is, do not wait for the studio to defend you. Become the studio. And that takes us straight to the modern chapter, because this didn't end in the 90s. She ran that same play in the 2020s on national TV, in primetime, in an action role people swore she couldn't pull off. And then that chapter ended too, not with her fading, but with her already setting up the next move. Now we're in the current era, and the pattern? It never really stopped. Let's talk about the Equalizer. Queen Latifah wasn't supposed to be the lead of a gritty network action drama in her 50s. That's not how Hollywood usually casts women, especially black women. The rules are messed up. You age out, you get softened into mom roles, and they hand the guns to younger, skinnier, usually white actresses. She did not accept that. She literally walked onto CBS in 2021 as Robin McCall, ex-CIA, tactical, dangerous, calm under pressure, and said, "Yeah, I'm the one saving people now." The show launched in primetime, drew millions, and ran 5 seasons. That alone is wild when you zoom out. It's a black woman rewriting what a network action lead can look like. Here's where it lines up with everything we've been talking about. What happened at the end? CBS canceled The Equalizer in May 2025, right before the season 5 finale aired. Official explanation: ratings slipped, money got tight, scheduling, budget math, all that polite corporate language. Behind the scenes, there were even talks of doing a shorter season 6 or trimming costs, and that still didn't save it. Translation: the network decided this story didn't fit their next lineup. The decision landed like a punch because they didn't just cancel a show, they shut down one of the last broadcast dramas led by a middle-aged black woman whose character is allowed to be dangerous, angry, complicated, and in charge. Now look at Queen Latifah's response. This part is important. She didn't go online and melt down or drag the network. She posted gratitude. She thanked the cast, crew, writers, producers, and she went straight to the fans and called them ride or die. Then she said something very on brand for her. Basically, don't worry, I'll be back. Flavor unit's not done. I'm not done, which is the same energy we already saw with her talk show years earlier. She treats herself like a studio, not talent. She positions cancellations not as they ended me, but that chapter closed, next one starts. That mindset is why she's still here while other people from that 90s era tapped out or got pushed out. But here's the layered part. By ending The Equalizer, CBS didn't just cut a show, they cut a lane. The series had already built a spin-off seed. They tested new characters that could have carried a related series. That got scrapped too. You're seeing the exact same ecosystem we talked about back in the Living Single days. Something anchored by a powerful black lead builds an audience, proves itself, generates loyalty, and then when it's time to expand, the door just quietly shuts. Budget, strategy, we're going in a different direction. It's never, we don't want this kind of black female lead in this time slot anymore. But somehow, mysteriously, that's the impact. Allegedly. And notice how she handled that shutdown versus how other Living Single cast members were handled in the 90s. Back then, when TC Carson allegedly spoke up for the group, the response was, cut him, make an example out of him. When Kim Coles allegedly pushed back against being body shamed, the response was, threaten to humiliate her and then let her vanish from episodes. When Kim Fields started burning out, the response was, let her leave and move on like nothing happened. Now jump to 2025. When The Equalizer ends, Latifah is not being cut. She's not getting quietly erased. She's not being turned into a joke. She's standing in front of the decision, publicly thanking everybody, and promising she'll be back with something new. She's already talking like a producer, like an owner, like, Flavor Unit and I will build the next thing too. That's not how sideline people talk. That's how power talks. So when people say, well, maybe this stuff with Living Single was just normal show drama, I'm like, no. Look at the pattern across 3 decades. In the 90s, alleged threats about weight to Kim Coles. Alleged pressure to get rid of Maxine, one of the sharpest, most assertive black female characters on TV. T.C. Carson claims he was fired for advocating for the cast, not because his character was done. Kim Fields quietly exits after real-life strain, divorce, and burnout, while another cast across town is getting paid like rock stars. In the 2010s, Queen Latifah's talk show gets canceled, and instead of letting her staff just get tossed, she pays people out of her own pocket when production shuts down. She acts like the company that should have had their backs. That's a power move in human form. In the 2020s, she leads The Equalizer, becomes a network action hero at an age where actresses usually get told, play the mom and sit down. And when CBS pulls the plug in May 2025, she frames it as, we did what we came to do, and we'll be back with something else. She literally tells the audience she'll be back, kicking ass in something new. That's not a goodbye. That's a teaser trailer. So here's what all this proves, and this is the uncomfortable part. Even when a black-led show proves it can work, it's always treated like it's temporary. It's always, we'll see if it lasts. It's always, can we afford this? Meanwhile, a near-identical structure with a safer face, or a face they think advertisers won't question, gets treated like franchise material. Gets treated like the future of this network. Gets endless marketing oxygen. That's not me calling anybody racist on air. That's me pointing at the pattern and saying, you see this too, right? And this is the part that ties straight into legacy. Because you can cancel a show, you can slash a budget, you can decide no season 6. But what you can't do, and this is where Queen Latifah is different, is erase someone who turned herself into her own pipeline. She doesn't just get cast, she builds vehicles. When one vehicle stops moving, she starts another. That's why she survived what other cast members from Living Single could not survive. She figured out the hack in real time. Don't beg the door to stay open. Become the door. Inside that pressure cooker, the cast says they were not treated like stars. They were treated like they were lucky. T.C. Carson says he spoke up for the group and got fired for it. Not because his character was done, but because his mouth was powerful and they couldn't control him. Kim Coles says she was told to lose weight or execs would literally write fat jokes into her script. Yvette Lee Bowser says execs tried to kill off Maxine Shaw, yes, Maxine, the sharpest black woman on TV at the time, because she was too much. And Kim Fields quietly tapped out because real life and mental burnout hit a wall and the set didn't feel the same anymore. That's not diva behavior. That's not creative differences. That's survival mode. And the wildest part, out of all that chaos, one person figured out how to flip the system instead of letting it chew her up. Queen Latifah went from rapper to sitcom lead to producer, to film star to daytime host to primetime network action lead in her 50s. She had talk shows canceled and still paid her laid-off staff out of her own pocket. She lost her brother in a tragic accident in 1992, and later her mother in 2018, and she still kept pushing. She just led The Equalizer for 5 seasons on CBS. An older black woman headlining an action drama, and when CBS canceled it in May 2025, she didn't act like she'd been cut. She acted like, that chapter's done, I'll be back, stay tuned. That tells you everything about her role in this story. Back in the Living Single era, the network could allegedly threaten people, reshuffle people, or just remove people to keep control. In 2025, you cannot remove Queen Latifah. She is not just talent, she is infrastructure. And that's her legacy. When people say Queen Latifah, they're not just talking about Khadijah James. They're talking about a woman who forced TV to treat a confident, dark-skinned, middle-aged black woman as the lead, in comedy, in drama, and in action, and dared networks to say no to her face. They're talking about someone who, according to reports and public estimates, now sits in the approximately $60 to $70 million net worth range, not off one hit, but off decades of refusing to stay in one box. So what will she actually be remembered for? Not the girl from that 90s show. Not the female rapper who tried acting. Not even the star of The Equalizer. She'll be remembered as proof that you can watch executives try to sideline you, try to cut your castmates, try to police your body, try to tell you which version of you is allowed on air, and you can still outlast them. And here's the uncomfortable question the industry still hates answering. If Living Single had been protected the way Friends was protected, if the cast had been nurtured instead of managed, would we be talking about it as a classic black sitcom, or would we be talking about it the way people talk about Friends, as default American culture? Because a lot of people are starting to say it out loud now. Maybe living single wasn't just first. Maybe it was better, and that was the problem. Did Friends copy Living Single, and did Hollywood quietly protect the copy while stripping power from the original black cast? We break down the long-running allegations. T.C. Carson says he was fired for speaking up. Kim Coles says execs threatened fat jokes if she didn't lose weight. Yvette Lee Bowser says the network tried to cut Maxine Shaw, and Kim Fields walked away burned out. We also follow Queen Latifah from sitcom star to producer to action lead, her show cancellations, how she paid her own staff, and where she stands now after the Equalizer ended in 2025. These are allegations, interviews, and public reports. I'm giving you the context and my take so you can decide.